Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be hailing from. This is CIQ's bi-weekly webinar series, recorded live on March 12th, 2026. Today, we are talking about a question that every IT leader faces. Who actually stands behind your Linux infrastructure? If you're not sure, then you've come to the right place. I'm your host today, Eric the IT Guy Hendricks, and joining me is our own Brady Dibble. If I bring him into the stage here. So Brady is our Director of Product Management here at CIQ. So for those of you that haven't met you, Brady, how about a brief introduction?
As mentioned, Brady Dibble, thank you for the introduction, Eric. I've been with CIQ for about 2.5 years, working primarily on our enterprise Linux products, and as we have a broader portfolio, how they integrate with the rest of our HPC, AI, and IT infrastructure products.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to have you with me because what about 2 weeks ago now, released RLC Pro, along with some other changes to our portfolio, and we're going to discuss those at length today. But I want to start from a high level view. I want to kind of take that 40,000 foot view, if you will. So let's kind of set the stage. We're talking very heavily about enterprise Linux right now. So what is your perspective on the enterprise Linux market today?
It's a great question. Enterprise Linux is essentially defined by stability and consistency and reliability and longevity. When a customer is planning out, especially the large customers we work with who are looking to use enterprise Linux, they're planning out their infrastructure not in weeks, not in months, not in years, but in decades. And they're saying, is this OS that I'm going to be using as a foundation for my stack going to not only be around in a decade, but is it going to be stable? Am I going to have an upgrade path? Am I going to be able to achieve my strategic goals when I build on top of this foundation? That has been challenged with the growth of AI, because that stability comes with a cost. That comes with the cost of you don't get features and you don't get functionality as quickly as you need to take advantage of the rapid development in the AI space. So businesses are torn between the need for stability and the need for consistency, the need for reliability, with the need to be able to use the latest NVIDIA GPUs and get access to the features and performance benefits that are tip of tree in the upstream. And that's where most of the challenges that I run into talking with our enterprise Linux customers is how can they have their cake and eat it too?
That's awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Particularly the space around talking about how people are planning infrastructure moves based on not years, but even up into the space of decades. So that kind of brings up an interesting question around Rocky Linux. I mean, Rocky Linux itself is everywhere. And so we'll talk about what these are a little bit later, but RLC Plus and RLC Pro have a direct relationship with Rocky Linux. So how can that foundation help users who need a little bit more than say just community?
Sure, and the community Rocky Linux is fantastic. And there's a reason why it's seeing such growth and such use everywhere. It's this successor, the natural successor to CentOS as a straight rebuild of enterprise Linux. That is what it's there to do. And it's opinionated in that it isn't trying to reinvent the wheel of enterprise Linux.
And to butt in for just a second and clarify, when we say CentOS, we mean CentOS Linux, the former downstream of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, just to clarify. Not to be confused with CentOS Stream.
Absolutely not to be confused with CentOS Stream. But a traditional CentOS Legacy, however we want to say it, is still, of course, being used everywhere. Over 25% of enterprises still use CentOS 7 or sometimes even 6. It's still a standard, and it's very well established as a standard. And even as that standard matures, there are expectations that you can use it everywhere, and that you have a reliable ability to access that standard and deploy it. Rocky Linux, as a community project, carries on that legacy from CentOS so that you have something to put out and roll out and get your hands on enterprise Linux, evaluate it, or in many cases, use it in production. That is the beauty of Rocky Linux. And that's why CIQ is the founding sponsor. Where we see customers, especially enterprise customers, run into challenges is they trust and love Rocky Linux because it is that reliable bug for bug enterprise Linux standard. And then the moment they start from that foundation, they say, great, I love that I have a solid foundation, but now I want to change it. Say, I love this bug for bug and I know it, but I want this bug to be solved, or I want this enhancement from the upstream, or I love the fact that it's an independent community, which is a unique item. It's an independent project. It is not owned by CIQ. It is sponsored by CIQ. And a lot of customers love the fact that it has that independence. And they go, that's great, but I actually need accountability. I need a vendor I can go to get help. I need changes from that baseline, from that stable baseline I know and trust, but it's not something I have the expertise to do or a desire to have something I build, maintain over time with all those changes. I need certifications that are very lengthy, challenging, and complicated to achieve, like FIPS 140-3 or Common Criteria. And that's where they need a vendor like CIQ. And that's where RLC Plus and RLC Pro come into play, that is our product. It is built on top of that trusted and loved foundation of Rocky Linux, but has all that functionality and all those features and value that enterprise customers really need.
Awesome, yeah. And you brought up one point that I want to double click on for just a moment. And I don't want to belabor it too long, but you mentioned that CIQ, and this is a common misconception. And I was just at the Scale conference last week in Pasadena, California. So if you were there, hi. But one of the interesting things was people assume that CIQ owns and operates community Rocky Linux, but that's not the relationship at all. Can you expand on what that relationship actually looks like a little bit?
Sure. And CIQ is the founding sponsor, but there are many other sponsors that support the Rocky Linux project and the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation, which actually is what controls Rocky Linux. So the RESF was started intentionally to have that distinction as a separate entity from CIQ. We're heavily involved in Rocky Linux. We support Rocky Linux. Our engineers are in the mattermost. You can talk to them. At the same time, that separation is intentional.
Awesome. And in fact, CIQ is not just a Linux company. We also offer tools like Ascender Pro, which is built on Ansible AWX. We have tools like Werewolf Pro and Fuzzball, if you're involved in the HPC space.
Yeah, CIQ really started as an HPC company. Our founder, Greg Kurtzer, he built Werewolf, which is built on the original Beowulf HPC cluster stack, and it's still keeps reinventing itself to stay current as the go-to tool for provisioning HPC clusters. And AI companies are finding that, hey, AI at that level is actually very similar to HPC, and you don't have to relearn how to get maximum performance from your very expensive cluster. You just reuse a lot of the concepts and tools that were developed for HPC. And so Werewolf and our Werewolf Pro product, Apptainer, which is our alternative to Docker for containerization, and then Fuzzball, which is our orchestration and scheduling tool for HPC and AI workloads. That's our foundation. We really added on Rocky Linux because there was a need from our customers to have that full stack. And of course, the situation with CentOS prompted the creation of Rocky Linux. And so it's just naturally led to where we are today, where customers want that whole stack from one vendor or much of the stack from one vendor. And we can make sure that they get an integrated product and platform.
Mm. Yeah, that's great history. And admittedly, something I was confused about until I actually joined CIQ a few months ago. So it's good to have that here and shared with the community. So let's kind of dive into the announcement that was made just a couple of weeks ago around the RLC line, which is short for Rocky Linux from CIQ. So that's RLC, and we have a few different offerings. So the first one is RLC Plus. It's free, but it's not community. Can you kind of differentiate those two for me?
So CIQ works very closely with cloud vendors and hardware vendors, and we found that to deliver the value, to ensure there's a build of Rocky Linux that works in the cloud across all the machine types and VM family options, that has the functionality baked into turnkey gold images that just work out of the box on the cloud, and working with hardware vendors like NVIDIA to have the easiest, lowest time to first token, the quickest time to get up and running, so customers do not have to deal with the complexities of dependencies around CUDA toolkit, the K-mods, the drivers around NVIDIA GPUs, Doka OFED, the container toolkit. There are so many moving pieces in the matrix of how to get NVIDIA and other hardware up and running. And then you have the complexity of getting up on multiple different clouds. All of those things are very challenging, frankly, for a community to provide, especially at the speed of enterprise. So CIQ, as part of our partnership with the clouds and the hardware vendors, have taken all of those the things we've built, the processes, the tools, the automation, and we've baked it into layered it on top of, rather, a Rocky Linux base and delivered it as RLC Plus. So you can come to CIQ and you can get RLC Plus, or will soon, and you can take that image and you can just go run it anywhere in the cloud or on top of the latest hardware you need. And you know that there's a vendor backing it, ensuring that it's all compatible, and that when you run a DNF update and you get the latest CUDA toolkit or the latest data center driver, it's not going to break because it's already been validated by CIQ to work together.
Yeah, it's a really cool setup because it's all built in. I mean, you take the ISO or you take the cloud image and you hit deploy and it's already there. You don't have to set up NVIDIA drivers. You don't have to set up the Doka toolkit. You don't have to pull down all the different firmware and packages. It's all built into the operating system. So all you have to do is just install it, start up the tools that you need, and you're ready to go. You're downloading your model. You're downloading. You're starting to train it. It saves you hours per server. And so if you've got a cluster of dozens or hundreds of AI nodes, you're talking hundreds of hours in savings right there. It's a beautiful math equation to run.
For some customers, could be 7 digits or more, because especially with there are always gremlins in the details. Secure boot is an example of this gremlin. Once you're dealing with certain NVIDIA software, at times you will have to disable secure boot to get DKMS to work. CIQ abstracts that all away. We have a partnership with NVIDIA. So we rebuild, we sign, we deliver the K-mods with a CIQ built version of the Rocky Linux kernel. And so it just works. All that headache is abstracted away.
As a former systems administrator, I love the phrase "just works." It means a whole lot fewer long nights for me. So we kind of hinted at something that I'll announce at the end of the webinar. Kind of an exciting day here at CIQ with a webinar and a new product release today. But not to get ahead of myself. We're talking about RLC Plus, which is not community, but it's not paid for. So who's the ideal RLC Plus user?
Well, startups, small businesses, students. During the supercomputing HPC cluster competition, for example, 75% of the teams were using Rocky Linux. And that means they had to do a lot of the work to get that running and tuned for working on their NVIDIA or AMD GPUs and their clusters themselves. RLC Plus would have saved them a lot of time and got them up to speed much faster. For enterprises, for home labs, for tinkers, it's there if you do not have the expertise to, you don't trust Claude to necessarily guide you in the right direction to get it up and running. But even for businesses, part of our partnership with the hardware vendors in the clouds is there are businesses who they just need a little more than they get from the community version, but doing it themselves is still not the best idea. So they can go take RLC Plus. It's free. There are no limits to how much you use it. You take it and boom, you've got a build of Rocky Linux that is tested in partnership with the hardware vendor and the cloud, and it just runs. So that saves businesses and enterprises a lot of time. Keeping in mind, RLC Plus is latest only. So and it does not have that same. There's a vendor behind it. There's CIQ. You can come talk to them, but it doesn't come with support. It doesn't come with some of the features that enterprises need, like long-term support to stay on a particular minor version, getting CVE patches. It does not come with FIPS certified modules. It does not come with a number of the other things that enterprises at scale actually need to deliver the strategic value they're looking to. If they have their own Linux team, great. I mean, part of CIQ's whole open source policy, our position, is that it should be like, these are all open source things. So one thing to note, every change that CIQ makes, all of our code for like the kernel and for these modules is all open source. It's not even behind a login wall. If you want to get access to it, it's all in GitHub. There is no, like, it is as easy as we can make it to get access to all of the source code. But if you are not in a position to build it yourself, to handle the validation, the testing, if you don't have your own secure boot key, which most people don't, and that's where, okay, you can come to CIQ and it's available.
Yeah, you definitely transitioned very well into my next question. RLC Plus is available from the CIQ portal, which we'll demo here in a little bit, and it's free. In fact, I use RLC Plus for a few personal projects, and in fact, I'm really looking forward to putting it to use as maybe a co-dungeon master for my D&D group. As people know, I'm a big D&D junkie, and so hosting my own model to be a co-DM with me sounds like a fun use case. But that's not the same offering that I would use if I were running a multi-million-dollar enterprise. But that's where RLC Rocky Linux from CIQ Pro comes in, RLC Pro. So what's the differentiation between just RLC Plus and the Pro version?
Pro is our single product that combines all the value that enterprise customers need. Instead of saying, hey, let's add from a whole menu of, well, I need enterprise Linux, but I also, need LTS, but I also need FIPS, but I also need, this and that. And there's this whole menu of checkboxes where you're debating which things you want to have. And then you end up with a very complicated matrix of which SKUs and which licenses are running where in your system. We are a customer first company. And so our first thought is what's easiest for the customer, not necessarily what's best for CIQ. Because we figure what's best for you is going to eventually be what's best for us. So that means RLC Pro, what is it? It's everything you need. RLC Pro comes with LTS. It's not an additional add-on that you have to pay for or think about. It's just when you get RLC Pro, you choose from any of the active major versions, 8, 9, or 10. And then you also can choose from the existing supported LTS versions. So if you need FIPS, it's included. That's right there. It's not an extra thing to think about. It's just a decision you make whether or not to enable that feature. And then over time, as we add additional functionality, rather than them spinning off as additional add-ons, generally those are baked in. Now, that is different, of course, from our workload optimized variants. And that is also an interesting conversation because RLC Pro is intended as that strong foundation, which is where you'll run most places. You run it in dev, you run it in production. But increasingly, there are more specific use cases that customers need. And what we see going into the future is that rather than just generic Rocky, enterprise Linux being the default, and customers then have to do all of the work to take this foundation and they do immense amounts of work to tune themselves. Increasingly, that work is challenging if you do not have Linux expertise. And even if you do, we work with some incredibly technical customers who are very adept at Linux. That doesn't mean they want to be a distribution or do this work themselves. That ongoing maintenance and that ongoing research and adaptation and build out of functionality is something that CIQ specializes in. So even those technical customers come to us and say, we have this repeating pattern of a way we are adapting and tuning enterprise Linux for this use case and that use case. And that's where our variants and overlays come into play, like RLC Pro AI and RLC Pro Hardened.
So it's kind of almost like an inverted pyramid. No, I said that backwards. I guess that would be a pyramid. At the base, you'd have community Rocky Linux and the enterprise Linux development lifecycle. And then on top of that, you've got RLC Plus, And then on top of that, you've got RLC Pro. And then you mentioned some of these variants like RLC Pro Hardened, which gets into the realm of FIPS and DISC compliance out of the box. So it just builds upon itself. And so that our customers or even our community members can go in and use what they need, pick the variant that works best for them without having to deploy a general purpose operating system and then fine tune it after the fact.
Yeah, having a gold image that gets you 90, 95% of the way there or more, it saves you time, not just the first time you set it up, but also every time you have to make an update.
For sure. And so one of the questions that often comes up is about accountability, and that's kind of what we teased in the introduction. Was one of the reasons why you choose a Linux vendor is so that you have not just the traditional support model, but also there's some legal accountability in there too. And this is another area that often leads to a little bit of confusion. So I want to get you your definition here, Brady, of what is vendor accountability and what does that mean when you're running Linux in production?
This is something that our founder, Gregory Kurtzer, and CEO, constantly talks about. Like, the code itself is open source. That is the core here. It is open source, and anybody can go take that code and they can go build themselves. I think you can also allude to a lot of the conversations people have had about with Claude. Oh, I can go make my own kernel using Claude, and I can tune it to my needs and go run it in production. You can. That's if it was that simple. If that was the only value, if the only value was in the source code itself, then there would be no need for companies that are backing it. The reality is there's everything around that source code is where a lot of the value comes from. Support, as you mentioned, knowing that when you hit a wall that you or your team just can't solve, you have someone and you can get connected to them in minutes and get a resolution from someone who lives and breathes it. Or if it requires a change, you can get that bug fixed and deployed, and your team isn't having to carry a one-off bug patch. But there's all the other ecosystem around it that is on the business side, the operational side. And that includes, for example, indemnification. When you're using open source products, you need to know that someone is making sure that you're not getting proprietary code into that supply chain. And if for any reason something did, that they had your back. So with RLC Pro, we have indemnification for all of the Rocky Linux packages that are being included in RLC Pro. So that is an additional indemnification above and beyond our base indemnification.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's an important distinction, especially if you're running in regulated industries.
Yeah, and Claude is not necessarily checking to make sure it's not injecting proprietary code. And if anything got in there, it'd be like, you're absolutely right. Good luck.
Right. Yeah. You mean I couldn't file a lawsuit against my Claude AI instance?
Pretty sure. Maybe ask Claude to go read through the terms of service there, but probably not.
There you go. So if I'm running a different enterprise Linux distribution today, and I really like RLC Pro, and I really like the idea of these function-built variants, what are some of my migration paths?
So one of the beauty of being part of the Enterprise Linux standard is that it is binary compatible. And anywhere you're running Enterprise Linux today, the migration back and forth is relatively seamless. There will be differences, like there will be modifications you have to make for URL paths, and the OS release files might say is going to have a different name. But broadly, Enterprise Linux is a standard. CIQ is part of the Open ELA with Oracle and SUSE, and we use a tool called EL Validated to validate binary compatibility of our products against the Enterprise Linux standard. So that gives customers a baseline so that they know that if you are running RLC Pro, for example, and you say, hey, you know what? I need to go back to a Rocky Linux community for whatever reason. It is a very straightforward transition because they're all binary compatible. If you are on any other enterprise Linux platform like Oracle Linux, that binary compatibility ensures you can make those transitions, and a lot of your workloads are going to carry over. And that's having that standard, especially in the age of AI, is particularly important because you can always come back to that standard and ensure that you have that compatibility layer and that confidence that what we see quite often, for example, with ISVs, is that they look at Rocky Linux and they say, well, it is standard with enterprise Linux, so I feel confident that this is going to pass, and that they will certify Rocky Linux alongside other enterprise Linux variants because it's tuned in and follows that standard very, very tightly.
And one point I feel like we should clarify is that you mentioned this, but I wanted to call it out, is that certification is not inherited. That CIQ goes out for specific certifications for specific major .minor versions and gets those certifications for ourselves. Did I hear that correctly?
And there's certifications, and then there's certifications. For the enterprise, like for ISVs and IHVs, hardware vendors and software vendors, many of them will just rubber stamp and say, hey, Rocky Linux it's following the enterprise Linux standard. I've tested on the enterprise Linux standard, so I'm confident that all of these enterprise Linux flavors or distributions are all going to work equivalent. Testing one gives me confidence in the others. It's not everyone, but like with CIQ, when customers say, hey, I work with this particular vendor and they aren't listing your product, great, come talk to us and we'll go talk to them together. And that's what we do today, is work with vendors to get RLC Pro and Rocky Linux certified explicitly for customers who need that confidence. When it comes to other types of certifications, those also don't just transition. FIPS 140-3 is an example. FIPS 140-3 is highly specific. It is per module, so essentially a single package like GNU TLS or libgcrypt. And if you are following the exact letter of the law, it is a specific binary version that has been seen by the testing lab, and only in a particular operating environment, down to the specific motherboard and processor. In practice, that's not how enterprises use it. Very few are leaning on the certified version. They are leaning on a compliant version. That means they need CVE patches, because you've got competition between, am I FIPS certified or am I following FedRAMP, for example, to ensure that I'm keeping all of my CVEs remediated. And that's where most customers use what we call compliant, which is not an official term. They take that certified base, and then they will use a version where CIQ is patching, CVEs, but we're maintaining cryptographic integrity. I mean, we're not touching the cryptography. That doesn't change. The only code changes are to patch those specific CVEs. And if a CVE patch were to affect cryptographic integrity, we would not apply it. And that's the trade-off you have to make. Now, to that point, Rocky Linux focuses on the latest builds. Every time when you certify a particular version of a module, you are certifying that version of the module, and there's a certain delta that generally is acceptable for something to still be compliant with FIPS 140-3. But the moment you make a minor version bump, it's truly a different version. The kernel is a great example. The kernel moving from Rocky Linux 9.6 to 9.7, that's a significant bump. And if CIQ, we got version 9.6. We are pursuing certification for that kernel version. It does not apply to the 9.7 kernel version. Because that delta is too wide. CIQ would not guarantee any level of compliance there. The delta is too wide. The cryptographic integrity is not guaranteed. There's too many changes. We had to go through for 9.6, for example, and work with the lab to make changes and add patches to bring it up to compliance with FIPS 140-3. Those patches, of course, are all publicly available, as usual, in our GitHub for anyone who wants to grab them. But the version of modules that are out in the Rocky Linux Community Edition, it is very hard for anyone to argue that they are FIPS compliant, certainly not FIPS certified. The delta is just too wide. So when an enterprise needs FIPS compliance, they need to come to a vendor like CIQ, because they not only get the version that has been seen by the lab, but CIQ handles things like the secure boot signing and the LTS. And if there are any issues, you've got CIQ backing it to fix those issues, because FIPS, and we've seen, can have challenges in very, very hyper-specific environments. And you need to work with a vendor like CIQ to resolve those issues in partnership with the lab to both maintain your FIPS compliance and resolve those types of challenges you may run into.
Was one of the most cogent and well put together answers to that question I think I've ever heard. And that's having been in the Linux side of the industry for over 15 years now. So thank you very much for that. We'll have to cut that as a snippet or something. That was great. So we've got a bit of a hands-on demo today, but before we dive in, there were a couple of questions put forth by the audience, which, by the way, if you are watching this live, feel free to put questions in the comments section, or if you're watching this after the fact on, say, our YouTube channel, please make use of the comments feature, ask your question, and we'll have one of our experts here at CIQ answer it as soon as we can. So the first question comes in from Eric. He spells his name with a K, but that's all right. So he asks that both RLC Plus and RLC Pro are available for free download and being updated, patched in a self-supported model. Just no support or no updates. Also, what does that look like, Brady?
So for clarification, RLC Plus is free, and very soon you will be able to go to portal.ciq.com, sign up, get a license, and start using it. With RLC Pro, it is available with a developer license, meaning you can use it for your own personal, non-commercial, non-production use in your home lab or for evaluation. For enterprises, however, even the self-supported model it is a per node price, or you can get it in the cloud marketplace very soon as a pay-as-you-go option. So the CIQ does offer for RLC Pro a self-supported level, but then we also have a standard and premium support options on top of that if you are looking for that support option.
Awesome, perfect. And then Mike asks, is there going to be some pricing listed for these offerings at some point, or do we need to contact sales for that information?
There will be pricing at some point in the near future that is listed. For now, though, please do contact sales. They'd be happy to help you out.
Awesome. So we've teased this a couple of times, this idea of CIQ Portal, and I'm really excited about it. I've got some behind the scenes access that we can show off. This will be rolled out to the public in stages over the next week or so, and then new features are coming. But I just happen to have some behind the scenes access here. So we are looking at portal.ciq.com, which Brady has teased a couple of times, and I'm logged into my organization. And we're looking at my dashboard right now. What kind of things would we like to point out to our audience, Brady?
Portal is our new customer portal, where we have kind of looked at how the experience has been historically, and we are starting from scratch to say, what would we want to design a customer portal for to get a customer to what they want as quickly as possible? There are so many moving pieces. There's so much information out there that I myself can get lost when going through software portals these days. And what am I like? If I'm just trying to get my product installed or get access to a product, if I just want to go, where the heck do I find a QCOW2 or an ISO or the containers? It can be a real journey, and you often don't have a map. So the first thing we're doing is making it easy. As part of our consolidation of products, you can click on catalog. And the first thing you see is some options for our solution stacks, how you can combine our CIQ products for certain use cases. For example, with AI and ML, we talked about what do you get when you combine Fuzzball, Werewolf Pro, and RLC Pro. But if you scroll down, you'll see our products. And keep in mind, we are going to go through rapid iteration. We're doing constantly watching how users interact with the site, and we're adding changes and new features based on where people run into dead ends or where there are questions. So if we look at, for example, RLC Pro, you can go ahead and get started. And we go straight to what we know what you want. You want to get started. If you already have a license, you just come down, you choose from a list of selections of, hey, what kind of image do I want? Do I want a Bootsy image because I'm trying to do image mode and I need immutability? Or am I going to go run a VM in the cloud? Or am I just going to do it myself? And you walk through this list and you're going to find, everything is there. Which version am I going to be using? Which architecture am I going to be using? What type of, do I want LTS, for example? It's it's a very fast drop down and decision tree to getting to the actual file you want. And you don't have to dig through, a bunch of different pages. It's straight to the point. If you click on VM and think, which one are we on? Are we on Harden? Right now we're repopulating our image tree for the portal as it's rolling out. I think this. So we were saying, hey, you want Arch? You want x86? Or you want our NVIDIA optimized image out of the box? There it is. And you scroll down a bit, boom, download it. It's right there. There's not much else you have to do. Over time, we'll keep optimizing this workflow to try to get you to what you're trying to do as quickly as possible and ensure you have all the information needed because you're busy and you don't need to have to dig through pages and pages to get running.
And as small a thing as it is, I actually like that I can go in and copy and paste the commands that I need to get this information. So it just makes it so easy to just come in and just cherry pick, boom, 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 version, architecture, VM type, variant, done. And go ahead.
We'll be adding more guides over time, depending on the, everyone is using a different mechanism for provisioning or managing their fleet. So not everyone's using virt install, especially at scale, but it's there as an example of here's how you would install it. Spin up the VM.
Yeah, this is great. And we'll of course keep everyone informed as new features are added. In fact, I'm excited to share that here in the next week or so, there will be a blog and a video walking through step by step what each of these screens are and how best to use it. I know the guy who's working on the video, and he knows his stuff. He's pretty sharp. So as we're kind of coming to the close of this webinar, I want to help our audience walk through a bit of a decision tree. So Brady, if you wouldn't mind, I'm a customer and I've got some questions for you. I need some help deciding where I jump in. How would I decide between RLC Plus and RLC Pro?
The beauty is you don't really have to decide at any given time. You can go grab RLC Plus in the very near future and go run with it and start using it. And the moment you decide you need LTS, you need FIPS 140-3 certified modules, you need additional compliance, you need that vendor throat to choke, you can come and you can upgrade. And the transition is incredibly simple. You can transition a node from RLC Plus to RLC Pro with pretty much a single command. Depot, enable, and then choose a particular version you're trying to enable. We try to make it as simple and seamless as possible to transition. That also means you don't have to make that decision right away, especially if you're trying to evaluate. And then if you're an individual or evaluating on a personal level, we try to make it as quick as possible to get access to a developer license for RLC Pro versus RLC Plus to go run it on your home lab or in an evaluation environment.
Well, here's a tricky question for you, Brady. Can I run different tiers for different environments?
Absolutely. It's really at your discretion. If you are running as a business, you can run RLC Plus wherever you want. That's kind of the point. But when you have environments that are needing LTS, they need FIPS 140-, they need an indemnification, then we have RLC Pro. And RLC Pro is just part of the whole stack. The RLC Pro is there to work and integrate with tools like Ascender Pro in your production environment. But if you decide that you're going to be moving towards RLC Pro, the idea is you can run it everywhere. You don't have to have one version or one tier running in development and another in production and some on your database servers and some on your, you don't have to split it. It's one version that you can run everywhere.
It makes life so easy. As a systems administrator, I always hated having to deal with selecting subscriptions, making sure they're in the right pool. It became kind of a mess. So being able to run the same basic software at different tiers, and whether it's dev or production, DR, I just one less thing I have to deal with.
One of the decisions we made, which is we're not tracking license inventory on the client side. Meaning when you go install RLC Pro, The only thing you need is the authentication token to do an update. And that's intentional from CIQ. We do not think it's customer centric to have to deal with license inventory tracking. It's it adds so much complexity for the administrator to have to juggle all of those, the inventory and all those licenses. And when you're sitting there going, I need to go provision 10 more 10 more instances, it's not a question of, hold on, let me go to procurement and get 10 more, or let me go find a couple of instances I can deprovision. It's, I've spun up 10 more instances. And when you're going to reconcile that when you talk to your CSM or during your next renewal is, what did you actually use? So these are the types of, we're trying to think about what life is like, because we are also people using this. We use our own products. We have CIQ we have been there using the Linux in production at scale, and we're thinking about what are your biggest headaches and how do we remove those.
That's awesome. So what about the variants? We've got Pro Hardened and Pro AI. When do those come into play?
There are patterns, workload specific patterns that every business has, where they start with that generic, plain, fully functional, very flexible enterprise Linux baseline. And they say, great, now I've got to go tune it over days, weeks, years to fit my particular use case. And then I got to fight with it and maintain it. And I've got to be a Linux expert. And maybe I have got some Ansible playbooks that I've got to run to convert a new node every time to hit my threshold, and then deal with reconcile any new bugs that pop up. It's a real pain. So we recognize these patterns that increasingly enterprises are looking for workload specific optimization. Two of those particular use cases are security and compliance, which is where we have RLC Pro Hardened, and the other is AI. AI is a big challenge from a dependency standpoint and from a tuning standpoint. For example, PyTorch, just PyTorch and Python by itself is already an incredible challenge to keep maintained, compatible, and working over each update, especially across the matrix of all the other software you need from NVIDIA and elsewhere. And having a gold image that is already tuned and validated and works across updates, then on top of that, you add on considerable performance improvements above and beyond that base enterprise Linux. That's where you would want to get to, and frankly, a lot of teams aren't going to be able to get to that themselves. On the other side, you have heavy demands in government and regulated industries, and especially increasingly with AI, every enterprise is under attack constantly because anybody can grab AI and just start attacking you, and it's the script kiddies, on steroids at this point. So traditionally, when people think hardening, they think, oh, I'm going to go apply my CIS or STIG, a security profile, and run my SCAP guide and get a printout, and I'm done. I'm hardened. But compliance is just the first step. Yes, I've got to check off the box for FIPS 140-3. Yes, I've got to check off the box and make sure that I'm STIG compliant. But that's when a CVE is out, you're vulnerable for days, for months sometimes. And during that period of time, AI doesn't care. Like, the threat actors don't care that you'll patch it eventually. That type of reactive patching is too late. So we are going beyond just reactive patching and compliance with RLC Pro Hardened and adding proactive detection and preventative measures at code level changes. So we modify certain core packages to harden them and cut off entire attack vectors. We also add some additional packages like Linux kernel runtime guard, which adds detection and prevention against rootkits. So you've got a container escape. LKRG has a very strong track record of identifying and preventing container escapes from getting into root and causing unknown amount of damage. So it's a multiple, a multi-sided approach to, you've got your compliance that you have to have, but you've also got preventative measures that mitigate entire CWEs so that you are much safer while waiting for those patches to be available and then applied. And then when things inevitably do escape, because there's no such thing as secure, there's only more secure, you have that detection piece. And that three-sided approach is the foundation of RLC Pro. And it's built on a very long journey and history of security in the Linux space with our lead Solar designer and his work at Optimal.
Yeah, that's awesome. If there's one thing that infrastructure leaders could take away from today's conversation, what would you want that thing to be?
So go to Portal and go grab a copy of RLC Pro and go use it. And if you got questions, we're here.
Awesome. Yeah. And if you want to learn more, you can head over to CIQ.com. And of course, if you want to get to Portal, there's a big login button in the top right of our website, or you can go straight there to portal.ciq.com. You can create an email-based login, or I think we support Google and one other that's escaping me at the moment. GitHub. Thank you. Yep. Yeah. Let's see. All right, so we've got a couple of questions that we may or may not be able to answer, but we'll give it a shot. Eric asks if there's any plans to expand CIQ Bridge to other distros, so beyond just CentOS Linux.
We have had questions about that. Won't name any particular distros, but there have been certain very large distributions which are aging and getting long with the tooth, and the transition away from them is not exactly a one-to-one transition. So we certainly have had those questions, and if you're looking for a particular distribution to be supported, please come talk to us. It really is about the number of customers who are demanding it. Right now, CentOS still is the elephant in the room for most businesses, but it's not the only one.
And I've got an answer for this one, but maybe you know better than I do. We have a question about any plans to add ButterFS support out of the box like Alma Linux.
We get that question a lot. The short answer is yes, we have been exploring it. It is something we're talking through with a number of customers to what the implementation would look like. And I'd love to hear from you about particularly where you're looking to apply it, why you chose ButterFS, and which versions you're looking. Is this something where you need LTS? It's not something where it's a apply everywhere across the board situation. But for certain use cases, it's something we would love to entertain. So please come talk to us, contact sales, or hit up info@ciq.com, and we'd love to get in touch.
Awesome. All right, so Brady, I really appreciate you joining me today. This was an awesome conversation, and as always, I learn things about Linux and our products by hosting these. There's no better way to learn about something than to try and teach it to someone. But I teased this at the start, but we actually have a new variant that just launched today. So there is a press release out on our website. We have officially announced RLC Pro AI. So we kind of talked about that pyramid of we kind of talked about that pyramid going from community to RLC Plus to RLC Pro, and we've got RLC Pro Hardened, which actually there was a webinar last month that I think it was my first CIQ webinar. We talked about RLC Pro Hardened at length. So definitely check that out, as well as the LKRG demo that was a part of that webinar. But RLC Pro AI is live now. It's been in tech preview for a bit, but it is now GA, and there are images available. And as you saw during our portal demo, you can actually download RLC Pro AI today. I'm really excited to get my hands on it and play with it now that it's GA. But yeah, check out. We've got a blog and a press release. There are videos upcoming, and in fact, if you are free on April 2nd, make sure to join us right here for another webinar. We'll be talking about maximize the throughput of your AI infrastructure. So we'll be highlighting RLC Pro AI. We've got a couple of industry experts and one of our engineers that has been really working hard on RLC Pro AI. We'll have a live demo and a spirited conversation about when you'd want to use RLC Pro AI. Brady, any thoughts about today's launch? Pretty cool that it coincided with our webinar.
A lot of the value is in the user space, especially for AI. You're dealing with NVIDIA software stack. You're dealing with, PyTorch, TensorFlow, Onyx, Hugging Face. All of these things can make people's eyes spin, especially doing it once versus doing it over and over. For me personally, the CIQ Linux kernel is what I'm most excited about. The CIQ Linux kernel is the default kernel for RLC Pro AI, and that is based on the upstream kernel.org long-term kernel tuned specifically for AI, and then built to work fit right in to that enterprise Linux user space. So you get all the benefit and stability and compatibility of the enterprise Linux user space, but we're able to bring down a lot of the functionality that customers they have to have to meet their goals with AI, to use the latest hardware, but also use absolutely mandatory features like common criteria. If you're looking at something like Intel TDX or Connect, and like you must have for multi-tenant environments, you cannot get that without moving to the upstream kernel. And CIQ brings that and right in a gold image on a silver platter, so you can get the latest of these features that are mandatory to stay competitive in this day and age.
That is awesome. Yeah, it's such an amazing tool, and I'm really excited to be bringing that webinar with you, or to you all. I speak for a living, can you tell? So definitely head over to events.ciq.com, and you can hit the webinar registration. Of course, the link will also be in the description below. So definitely head over to our webinar registration page and book your seat for that. Luckily, seats are not limited, so feel free to register and join us either live. We can take your questions on air or after the fact on our YouTube channel. In fact, I've got probably a dozen or so videos that are in various stages of completion, talking about Fuzzball, talking about Ascender Pro, talking about RLC Pro, RLC Pro AI. So we've got a wide variety of topics coming to our YouTube channel. So make sure to head over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel there. And if you are watching this after the fact, make sure to hit that like button so we know that this content resonates with you, as we're busy not only releasing new products, but releasing new marketing content as well. That just about brings us up to time. So I really appreciate all of you joining us either live or after the fact. And Brady, thank you very much for being my guest today. It was a great opportunity to pick your brain and share your knowledge with others.
Always fun to talk to you. I look forward to our next one.
For sure, I'll take that as a volunteer and make sure I get you booked again real soon. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. And until April 2nd, we'll see you next time.